Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this episode of Beyond Max Q. I'm Mollie Jahner, your host. I am joined today by Canaan Heard. He is the founder of Hurd Holding Company. And I have to say, he also is just knowledgeable about so many topics. So we're not going to have enough time with 30 minutes allotted. I think we need like 30 days to understand everything that's going on in there. That said, will you introduce yourself a little bit and kind of some of the projects and the things that you work on?
Sure. Um, my name is Canaan Heard. I started Hurd Holding Company about 5 years ago, and I work mainly with fundraising and mergers and acquisitions. We help um, startups, everything from startups all the way to small to mid-sized corporations raise money for deals. We put deals together. We also source deals, and yeah, we kind of handle a lot of the legwork, a lot of going out and finding deals, putting them together, helping investors invest their cash, and then I have my own portfolio of stuff I manage.
So, what does a day in the life look like then?
No day is the same. I generally start my day about 5:15 in the morning. I read for about an hour to 2 hours to sometimes 3 hours, depending on what's going on that day. I read everything from finance to the news to what's going on in the world. If we're working on a deal, I'll go through the CIM. And then usually mid morning is when investor calls start. So, we usually try to have, calls lined up well in advance. We'll By this point, the investor has already seen a teaser, so
Mhm.
we'll go through kind of like the finer points of that. If they like the deal, we'll send them an NDA. Once they do that, then we'll do a deeper dive through the CIM or the marketing materials that were sent to us.
Mhm.
And generally speaking, before we reach out to an investor, we already have the capital stack kind of already put together.
Mhm.
And so it's usually either discussing a deal as the first time they're seeing it, or if we've already gotten into, they've already have an NDA signed, or and they've already seen the CIM. We're like, hey, look, we have X percent of bank debt that we're going to use for this project, and then we'll say we're looking for check sizes between like 500,000 all the way up to like 8 or 9 million, right? Depending on the size of the deal, depending on what the deal looks like. Also, generally by that point, we've already talked to the sellers and gotten a better understanding of what they want as far as if they're going to offer a seller's note, or if they're going to roll some equity, or if they're going to do an earnout. And then at that point, it's kind of managing your investors and saying what they have to, seeing what they want, and then how's the best way to help them.
Yes. So, you work with investors every day. I would
Mhm,
love for you so our whole audience is made up it's primarily founders who are
mhm.
also looking to get in front of investors. I would love like any tips or tricks you have when speaking with investors or even from like a pitch deck perspective. What do you think gets noticed?
So it's really easy. It's a lot easier to raise money when you don't need it.
Yeah. I don't
And
think anybody in this group is in that position.
what generally happens is, people don't walk around with a shirt that says I'm an investor. And generally speaking, I network a whole lot, right? So, I went to LSU for undergrad, I went to Tulane School of Business for business school. We try to make all the alumni events. So either in Baton Rouge or Houston or Dallas or Atlanta. Tulane has a lot of stuff in like New York City, so we'll go up there and do that. But it's always good to not be under the gun, where you can have a lot more, I guess, casual conversation, we'll call it, with, hey, look, here are the things that we're looking to do. Here's what we want money for. Here's what that money is going to be allocated to. Whereas I know with a lot of startups, they're running out of runway. They're running out of runway. They're running out of runway. Their burn rates is way more than they anticipated, and so they're constantly just calling investors, trying to get in front of them, trying to see the new pitch deck, trying to do this, and it's really at that point, I think they've waited too long.
Mm,
Um, because investors are normal human beings. They have lives outside of investing. They have families. They have kids. They have spouses. They have partners. They have whatever, and they're just like us. They take the summer off. They go to vacation, or they go to Europe, or they go somewhere. And it's just like if you're constantly trying to get an extra $150,000 to hire another person. You're trying to do like, are you trying to raise like $1 million? And it's like August, right? So I know a lot of people in New York City, they travel during August, right? So if you waited till like the end of July and you're like, hey, we're going to run out of money by mid August, we need to raise $4 million. Those guys are all gone, right? They're at the beach,
Mhm.
they're at Long Island, they're in Europe, they're wherever. And so, you emailing an investor multiple times is not, and I hate to say it, but it's just not going to get you anywhere, right? Because
Well,
there
they
ain't
might not
no
even
like,
get your email. I mean, I don't really check my email that often anymore either. Like, I feel like there's other modes of communication that might even be more more strategic.
yeah, and that's why you go to the networking things, right? So one of the things is, and I'll kind of break it down like this. Most cities have angel investor networks. They're tied to either the university or like a high school or like an investor group in your town. I know like New Orleans has New Orleans Angel Investor Group. They're a pretty large group. Baton Rouge has their own angel investor group. Shreveport has one. New York City has one. Atlanta has, I think, multiple ones. And so, if you have the idea to start a company and you know you're going to need some money, I would start by reaching out to those people and saying, "Hey, look, here's what I'm trying to do." A lot of times, investors, if they like you or they like your idea or they like your company, they'll sign on and they'll be like a sounding board. And then once you've kind of built those relationships, they'll be like, "Hey, I can write you a $30,000 check from my buddy down the street. He can write you a $50,000 check." And then kind of, if it doesn't, and also if they don't like your company or they don't think it's a good fit for them,
Mhm.
say you're doing coding and the guy made all of his money in real estate. So he's not going to understand coding or fintech or something like that. But chances are somebody in his investor network knows coding or knows tech and knows how to work through that. And so once you've built a relationship, they're more than happy to pick up the phone and call somebody else in their group. So that's the number one thing is, go to all these events because you're right. People email me multiple times a day saying, "Hey, can you look at this? We're looking for a $30,000 check. We're trying to close out this last round." And by the end of the day, I've gotten like 8 or 9 emails. Oh, and the other thing is when you email an investor, try to send them a slide deck that's less than 10 slides or 10
Yes.
slides or less. Guy Kawasaki has a really good presentation on the top 5 or the top 10 slides you need. Um, Frequently, when I'm asked to review pitch decks, they're sometimes in excess of 30 slides.
Wow. Yeah.
And every single slide has so much information that I'm just like, I don't have time to go through this. I'm sorry. And I always try to follow up when I can, be like, sorry, I don't have time to go through your whole entire slide deck. Um, can you send me like the first, like how much you're looking to raise, what's it used for, what's your current valuation if you have one, how are you going to raise this money, and that's it. We got asked to participate in a real estate deal, and the guy sent me 110-page document.
Gosh.
And I was like, "Well, how much you trying to raise?" And I was just like, I'm not going through all this stuff. You had all the legal jargon, and it was for a hospital, so it was really complicated. And I was like, I don't want to deal with this stuff. And so when you reach out to investors, just be aware that these are human beings. They have lives outside of investment. They're not, as much as startup people who run startups, they're working 90, 110 hours a week. Most of these guys have already made all their money,
Right.
right? And so they're vacationing, they have kids, they have grandkids, they play golf on the weekends, they have hobbies. And so, when you approach an investor, especially if you're just cold emailing them, I would spend a lot of time condensing your pitch deck into maybe like 10 slides or less and making sure that you stick to maybe 2 or 3 topics per slide, because chances are he's going to go through that. And if for somehow some reason he opens up your email, if it's pretty condensed, and say, look, I'm looking to raise $150,000 for a series A round, or pre-seed round. um this money is going to help me hire a coder and a marketing person. Here's what I'm doing. I think you'll get a lot more traction from investors. And also, I think the most important thing is you have to hook them in the first 2 slides,
Yes. Yep.
right? if you don't hook them in the first two slides, they're gonna look at the third slide and be like, I don't understand this, or I don't understand, this is something that I'm not interested in it, or I have no idea what you're doing, and so you know, I'm gonna go on to the next email.
What are some of the best questions you've gotten from startups as an investor? Like, because I imagine like coming into it too, like prepared, not just like with an ask, but hoping to learn is probably something that you guys are looking for too.
I guess the most important thing is have an ask.
Yeah.
Right. I've sat in and you laugh, but I've sat in the end of presentations and I have no idea what you're doing. Right. Or like how much money you're looking to raise or what are you gonna do with that money. And like we all know why we're there. Right. You shouldn't be scared to ask for a check, right? Because by the time I've sat in a presentation with you, I've gone through your pitch deck, I probably had one or two calls with you or at least one Zoom to kind of
Right.
understand more about what you're looking for. And then, I've chosen some time and said, look, I'm going to give you probably 15 to 20 minutes, but you have to have an ask,
Hmm.
right? And a lot of times they'll have all this really heavy tech, exactly what their company does, like the coding, stuff like that. But you get to the end of the slide, it's like, thanks, have a good day. It's just like, that's it. Like, how much are you trying to raise? What is that money going to be used for? Are you trying to raise through a safe, was it simple agreement for future equity? Or you
Hmm.
actually have like a Series S corporation? But that's probably the most important thing is like have an ask and don't be afraid to ask for money. The reason why we're sitting in this room or we're sitting in this Zoom, we're sitting in this presentation is I know you need money. You
Yes.
shouldn't be you shouldn't be shy about asking for money.
Yeah. No, well said. Well, and while we have you here, because I know you have the investor side, the M&A side, you have all that experience, but you're also a founder and a legacy business owner, right? I would love for you to talk a little bit about the generational business that you've kind of inherited and are running with your family and kind of some of the things you're doing there.
Sure. So we have two companies. One's called Fox Game Calls. We've been around for 74 years. Started by my great grandfather. Really turned into a corporation by my grandfather. We make game calls. We have a total, I think, of like 79 or 80 different SKUs. I'll save you the laundry list. But we're started in Southwest Louisiana. We've been in the same building since 1951. We sell all over the world. We sell what's game calls but we sell all over the world. It's a fun business to run. I absolutely love doing sales for us.
Hmm.
I get to go to all the small mom and pop hunting stores throughout America. I've made a lot of really good friends like that. And then we get to go hunting every hunting season, which is wonderful. The other one is a property management company. We have 22 properties, which includes a cattle farm, which I manage for cows, and duck hunting and goose hunting. We have an oil and gas lease. We have single family homes, multifamily homes, and we have industrial warehouse space.
Hmm. That's amazing. I would love for you to talk a little bit about the challenges of legacy business. And, I remember we talked about this in a previous conversation of why what you have is kind of working, but then talking about what that looks like, right? Because I think you mentioned a disconnect sometimes between the generations. I think it would be good to kind of dig in on that a little bit.
Sure. As we all have noticed, technology has increased drastically in the last 74 years. And how things are sold, how things are marketing, how things are made, all that's changed. And so, you know, I'm 43, so I was brought up like, I had a Facebook account in undergrad, and then, Facebook is a huge thing, Instagram is a huge thing. Whereas like the other generations, they're like Facebook is just something that kids play on, right? But what a big thing was we had to convince the previous generation that this is something we spend a whole lot of time, money, and effort on. And sure enough, I started doing our Instagram and Facebook posts probably like 6 or 7 years ago, and we've gotten a lot more traction and a lot more viewers and a lot more subscribers, which has been really great for our brand. Um, but as things change, the younger generation has to one be aware of that the previous generations weren't raised in the same time frame. They didn't have access to the same thing. Like we all had computers in middle school and high school, whereas like other family members may not have been taught how to use a computer in elementary school. So it's those things, and it's really just you have to keep an open mind, and you have to be very aware of what the previous generations have done and what and how they see things. And then you really have to realize that the market is going here, and here's what we need to do to capture that market share, or to regain market share, or to reach a new customer group.
Mhm. No, I love that. That's really good. And I like I said, you're a founder, and we primarily have an audience of founders. I would love for you to talk a little bit about your founder journey. And I know, you served, and kind of what now didn't you say, I think in a previous thing, now I ride horses and I go hunting and I play golf for a living. And I loved how you said that, because I know that that's the high level, but like there's so much work that goes into it in the background. And so I just would love to have you talk a little bit about that.
So, and I always like to say this, and I said this. I had a meeting yesterday with a guy who's trying to figure out. He's leaving the military, and he's like, "Do I need to go to law school? Do I need to do this? Do I need to do this?" And he's like, "Well, how'd you do all this?" I said, "Well, I do three things really well. I drink a lot of beer, I shoot a lot of ducks, and I play golf." Right? Um, and this, and everyone's like, "Oh, ha ha, your life is so easy, right? Or your life must be so hard." But really, for in everything you do in the business world, it's all about relationships, right? There's that saying that you can go, was it, you can go faster by yourself, but to go farther, you need a team.
This has been so great. Thank you. I'm gonna put some links in the video description if you guys want to reach out to Canaan. Make sure you're doing it in 10 slides or less. And make sure you say a hi, how are you, before you do it. And then we'll send all those over there. And I appreciate your time today. Thank you very much. I know you're very busy, so thank you for spending it with our podcast.